The weight was always on Judge Mersen's shoulders. He ensured that he did everything to sabotage the rule of law. Regardless of the immunity case, Mersen made sure that we didn't have an expert witness even testify about what a campaign contribution was. He allowed the jury to be dismissed into the wild, wild west, in my opinion, to read mainstream media and all the other news instead of having a decision. And the most vile act was the unconstitutional gag order against President Trump, which, by the way, is still pending. There was only a partial repeal of that gag order. President Trump still can't speak about this biased liberal DC judge or his daughter that made millions.
All right, guys, I hope you had a great weekend. Welcome back to the Sean Spicer Show. A lot to get to on this holiday week. You know, this is supposed to be the sleepy week, quiet week as we head into the July 4th holiday, but two big things happening, right? I'm going to break both of them down for you. One, the debate meltdown. The debate meltdown continues, and a lot of people are out there with a lot of theories and a lot of ideas. I'm going to set the record straight for you. I'm going to give you the straight talk about what's really going to happen in the process, because there's a lot of people that are saying, well, what happens if, and da-da-da-da. I will cover it all. Trust me, I'm going to tell you exactly what's going to happen and then when it's going to happen or when it could happen. You're headed into a holiday week. I get that. There's going to be the crazy uncle, the liberal cousin. I don't know. Maybe even one of your kids that's off at college somewhere hanging around with Palestinian protesters that doesn't understand politics. And I heard that Donald Trump, da-da-da. I'm going to give it all to you. You will be the smartest person at the barbecue. Trust me. So we're going to get to all that. The other big thing this morning is the immunity case. I'm going to break that all down for you. Plus, attorney Mehek Cooke is here. She's going to tell us what it all means and where it goes. This is an episode you want to see before you get into a holiday week. There's going to be a lot of people trying to tell you what's happening, what's not happening, what it all means. I don't really care. This is the place to get it all. Before I do that, I want to tell you about my friends at 4 Patriots, because there's a lot of things that can shock us, right? One of them, it's always good to be ready. And the beautiful thing about having a Patriot Power Generator 2000X in your house, as I do right over there, is that I get to sleep easy. If something happens, an attack on the power grid, extreme weather, who knows? It knocks out the power, I'm ready. I can take my portable Patriot Power Generator 2000X and bring it wherever I need. I can plug in the biggest things, my refrigerator, TV, medical devices. I can bring it to a friend's house, a family member's house. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't need gas. It doesn't need to be filled up. It doesn't have fumes or massive noise. No, the Patriot Power Generator 2000X runs entirely on solar panels that come free with it. This is what you need in a time of emergency. And if you go to 4patriots.com/Spicer, you can join me in having one in your house. Get ahead of the curve, right? So having a generator is one thing, then having to worry about the gas, and then is the gas going to be available? With a Patriot Power Generator, all those worries are gone. Join me. Go to 4patriots.com/Spicer and get a Patriot Power Generator right now and the free solar panel that comes with it, so you never have to worry. Okay, now let's get into this. This debate was a disaster. We covered that, okay? We all know that. But then the excuses started to come. A bad cold. The staff. It was just a bad night. No. None of the above. This was an unmitigated disaster. Okay, here's the thing. Everyone's saying Obama had a bad night. Yes, that was a bad night. No one questioned Obama's mental acuity. Maybe that he was too liberal, too progressive. But no one said, oh my God, the guy's not up to the job. Right? In fact, I mean, anyway, that wasn't the problem. This is not going to get better with age. They're talking about, maybe we send him out and do more interviews. Yeah, go for it, brother. You prepped this guy for 7 days. 7 days. He did nothing else. He sat at Camp David and did nothing but prep. I didn't prep for 7 hours for most of my exams. And I still got by. This was an unmitigated disaster, okay? And it doesn't get better with age. It's not wine. It's going to get worse and worse. So saying we should send them out and do more, no, not going to happen. Okay. So I will get to all this in just a sec. But here are my top thoughts. And I want to make sure, as I said, going into barbecue season, that you get all this. Biden isn't dropping out. It's not going to happen. He's not going to drop out. I'm going to tell you about the process so that you understand that as well in just a minute. But let me just start by saying it's not going to happen. They had this big powwow I'll talk about in a second. You think Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and all these people who are clinging to him from power are just going to go, you know what? It's not in the best interest of the country. This is the only thing they got. You think Hunter Biden, grifter in chief, is suddenly going to go, hey, Dad, for the good of the country? Are you kidding? I got nothing else. Who's going to buy my art? Jill Biden, she's on the cover of Vogue today. That all stops. These guys are clinging to power, and he's the only vessel that they have. They're not just giving it up. I'll touch on that in a minute. But two, the more that Democrats, elites, the New York Times, etc., try to push for him to come out, the less likely it actually becomes. He hates this. He hates the fact that they don't accept him. And the more that they push him to do anything, it's not going to happen. But let's be clear, and this is something that they all know. If he did walk away, it's Kamala Harris. This talk of Gavin Newsom, not going to happen. They all know it. They all know that it's Kamala Harris if he were to walk away. Biden wants a legacy item. And being able to say that he anointed the first black female presidential candidate, they're not going to turn it over to a straight white dude. Are you kidding me? How do we sit here and honestly have a debate saying that this party, that everything who is about identity politics, and it's not just this party, this is a president whose entire legacy, I wrote about this in my book, Radical Nation. This entire presidency is predicated on identity politics. Pete Buttigieg, do you think he's qualified to be the Secretary of Transportation? He was a young gay guy that this is it. His hometown, where he was mayor of in Indiana, had 66 buses. 66. And now he's the Secretary of Transportation, in charge of our highways, seaways, roadways. Yeah, that made sense, right? Ketanji Brown Jackson. Yeah, I picked her entirely because she was black. I picked Kamala Harris because she was a black female. Like, all of this is just going to go out the window? No. This is happening. The Democrats' progressive wing of the party is not just going to let that happen. They know this. I've said this before. This is why they chose her. It was the greatest guarantee of his reelection as their Democratic nominee. They're not going to get rid of him. They know how unpopular she is. All right, post-convention, and I brought this up. Remember, the convention nomination process has been moved up. The geniuses there couldn't figure out how to get on the Ohio ballot. So while the convention starts in mid-August, they're moving up the nomination process. They're going to do it virtually. The timeline is condensed. It's not the start of the convention. It's actually a week before that. By the way, the media, have you noticed they've shifted already this morning? Yesterday, the NBC had this thing about Camp David, and we'll talk about that in a second. Big powwow at Camp David with the family. They're going to discuss his future. Then this morning, I wake up the Today Show. It's about weather and travel in the 4th of July weekend. Because they don't want to report. They got the talking points, right? Do not talk about this anymore. Stop the narrative. The decision's been made. He's running. Jill decided he's running. Hunter too. So no more talk about this. Understood? NBC, everyone else? Stop talking about it. Talk about the weather. Talk about anything else. And the other big takeaway that I thought was so funny on the Sunday show, Trump didn't answer the question and he was lying. They've got to now start shifting this all, right? He did answer the questions. They didn't like the answers. That's the truth. He answered all the questions. They just didn't like the answer. Kristen Welker on Meet the Press about this abortion stuff. I tweeted out the actual audio from Governor Ralph Northam from Virginia. He said it. This isn't a Republican talking point. It's not even just an audio recording, because when he was in the radio station, they were videotaping it. You can see him. He says we wait for the baby to come out, then we talk about the mother and make a decision about what to do with the baby. That's him. And by the way, he's a pediatrician. He's a doctor. This isn't a Republican made-up talking point, misinformation, a cheap fake, a deep fake, whatever you want to call it. This is what he said. And yet Kristen Welker from NBC is like, this is not their position. Oh, thanks for subbing in as the host of the DNC. That's their position. It's a fact, Kristen Welker. I know you don't like it, and I know you're embarrassed for your party because you think it's a liability and you want to attack Republicans on the issue. But the reality is it's on tape, and you refuse to ask Democrats about it because you don't like it. I get it. You're a liberal. It's, you just don't deny it. They got rid of Chuck Todd because they needed someone more liberal. And now you have to play the role. Fair enough. But the other thing that's funny is they keep talking about Trump lying. What about Biden? He talked about Afghanistan. No one died on my watch. The border. All this other stuff. He even lied about his golf game. And yet Trump's the liar? Isn't it? I just find that funny. You got to think about this for a second, though. Because Biden's been running for president since, the 80s? His first run was railroaded because he plagiarized. Now, we may call it plagiarism, a gaffe, a misstatement when it comes to Biden, because we don't want to call it a lie, do we, on the media? But think about it. This is what has plagued him all the time. He talks about jobs he's had that he hasn't. I was a truck driver. I was in the civil rights movement. I was a professor at Pennsylvania. I taught a law school. I was graduated first in my class. I got 5 full scholarships. Aren't those lies? I used to know a guy named Corn Pop on the Amtrak or whatever it is. I don't, but these are not true statements. And yet Trump's the liar because they need something to pivot to. They can't tell you that, look, he said things over and over again in that debate. Biden went out Friday and tried to clean it up. He had this rally. And he started to say that he wasn't as young as he once was. He doesn't walk as strong as he used to. But he knows the truth.
Folks, let me close with this. I know I'm not a young man. State the obvious. I don't walk as easy as I used to. I don't speak as smoothly as I used to. I don't debate as well as I used to. But I know what I do know. I know how to tell the truth.
What? I mean, this, like I said, and he gets a pass on that. He says things all the time that aren't true about policy and then personal stuff. But because he's as Robert Hur said, an elderly man with a poor memory, we give him a pass. We call it a gaffe. We don't. I don't. The media does. It's not a gaffe. What's the difference? Trump's a liar and he's just a gaffe machine? When you lie about your bio, when you lie about your policies, why aren't those lies? Why is it different with Trump? So let's get to the reaction of this real quick. Before I do that, though, I just want to tell you real quick about one of the great sponsors of the show and why Democrats scare me so much. When they were in power, what did they do? They grew government. They hired over 50,000 new IRS agents. 50,000. Think about that for a second. What are these folks in Washington going to do? We talk about the lawfare. These folks are coming after people who haven't paid taxes, who maybe because of the pandemic owe 10,000, 5,000, a million, 10 million, personal business. It doesn't matter. They're sending out what they call pay-up notices. They're coming after anybody and everything, and they don't care how little the amount is because they're the IRS. They have the full backing of the U.S. government. This isn't a private sector enterprise where they have to weigh, does it make sense to go after you? They'll spend billions, thousands, hundreds of thousands going after somebody because they can. If you get a call, a visit, or a note from the IRS, call my friends at Tax Network USA, tnusa.com/Sean Spicer, the full name there, or 1-800-245-6000. Please do not talk to the IRS without talking to the folks at Tax Network USA, tnusa.com, full name Sean Spicer, right afterwards. They have recovered over $1 billion for their clients. They are the experts in this field. They know what they're doing. You cannot just have a simple call with the IRS. These are your advocates. These are the experts. These are the fighters that will help you. Do not try to navigate the IRS on your own. Call or visit Tax Network USA, tnusa.com/Sean Spicer. All right, let's get back. The Biden family, as I told you, had this big powwow at Camp David. And I want to get to the court cases in just a second. We're going to break this big immunity case down. But I want to just say, they had this big meeting at Camp David. And they're blaming everybody. CNN, the makeup people, and I'm not kidding. This is true. They're blaming the makeup people at CNN because of how he looked. As if they didn't have a say. Do you think they send the candidate into a room and say, okay, come out and go on stage? His entire team is there. This isn't his first rodeo. This isn't like the first time he's ever done an interview. The guy's been in public office for a half a century. And so they meet and they start apparently blaming everyone. Ron Klain, Anita Dunn, Bob Bauer, his personal attorney who helps prep him. Everybody, CNN. Oh yeah, you guys gave us the rules we wanted. How stupid are you? I mean, what? This is crazy. This is what Jamie Raskin said. They're very honest. He's the congressman, that going after Trump guy. There are very honest and serious, rigorous conversations taking place at every level of our party. We're having a serious conversation about what to do. One thing I can tell you is that regardless of what President Biden decides, our party is going to be unified. That doesn't sound like a vote of confidence, does you? But here's something that I thought was shocking, by the way. This came from Axios, and it's getting lost, but you need to hear it. This is from them. Even the White House resident staff, which serves the first family in the mansion's living quarters, has been kept at an arm's length. A White House official said the president is deeply appreciative of their staff, but they let him go. What? You got to be kidding. They are so concerned about the president's behavior in the residence that they send the people who are there just to make sure that he gets a drink or a snack or whatever. I've been in the residence several times with President Trump. These are the people who take care of him. They don't want the president to see what's going on, so they send him home. That should be sending out, hello, ding, 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 ding. The New York Post came out with a story to tack onto that said that the president's on his game between 10 and 4. Are you kidding? When I worked for Trump, he was like 24/7. And I know that sounds like some kind of talking point. I used to love when he played golf on the weekends. It was like 2.5 hours. Of course, the guy plays golf in like 2.5 hours, 18 holes. But that was the one time I knew I was probably not getting a text or a call. We didn't get text. But we got calls, or I had to watch for tweets. When he was on his game, it was like finally 2.5 hours. He was on. You better be up early. I was up at 5 a.m. because I knew that by 6 I was getting a call or something sent to me. President's watching clips. He's looking at Twitter. He's seeing this. He wants reaction. He got a report. He wants feedback on this. Think about this. The president of the United States, according to the New York Post, 10 to 4. Wow. All right, so let me just tell you about the elephant in the room, the process, and then I'll get to the case. Here's the process. Where do things go from here? There's 3 stages. Before the convention, after the convention, after the election. Before the convention, which again, he's not going to drop out, then it would all go to the convention. That's the delegates would decide. After the convention, the DNC entirely decides, the Democratic National Committee, just the members of the DNC. After the election, it would go to the electoral, to the electors. They would have the right to put in who they wanted, theoretically. Obviously, the choice would theoretically, and after they meet, technically there is a stage 4, it would go to Kamala Harris. Those are your 4 stages. Just saying. Just understand that. Between now and when he gets virtually nominated, yes, if he dropped out and he's not going to, that's how it would happen. Afterwards, after the convention, after he becomes nominated, wholly, entirely, 100%, the members of the Democratic National Committee get entirely to decide. That's why I don't think it's going to happen. All right, let's get to this case. I'm about to bring in Mehek Cooke, attorney, Ohio political operative, to break this down. This was a huge win for Trump. Not just legally, but politically. This is going to make sure that this is not going to see the light of day between now and the election. Where does it go from here, though? What happens next? I'm going to break it all down with attorney Mehek Cooke. I want to bring her in and see how this thing plays out. Not just in the short term legally, but in the long term legally and politically. All right, let's bring her in. All right, counselor, I need to get schooled on this decision. What does this mean legally and politically? And the nice thing about you is that you can kind of cross both streams. Tell me what this means first legally in terms of immunity for Trump and the case?
Well, Sean, this is a massive win for President Trump and any president that runs after President Trump, because this truly allows for a president to carry out their constitutional duties without fear of criminal prosecution when they're carrying out official acts. There's been so many questions about when you're acting as commander in chief, can you be criminally prosecuted? And the Supreme Court came down a 6-3 decision saying no, a president, when they're carrying out their official acts, cannot be criminally prosecuted. So this is a huge victory for President Trump and future presidents, because we cannot have fear of prosecution when they are carrying out their constitutional obligations and protecting the United States of America.
You know what's odd to me? The three liberals dissented, okay? I assume everything that the court ruled today makes sense, right? I mean, President Trump teased Biden about this in the debate, saying, Joe could be convicted because he's done a lot of bad things at the border, et cetera, during the debate. And I think that what concerns me is the lower courts and these three liberals on the Supreme Court didn't even acknowledge this level of official immunity. And it would seem to me that if the liberals had their way, if you have a bombing that involves an innocent person, which they often do through no fault of their own, it's bad targeting, etc., that the president could be sued. And I can't think to myself, what kind of person, no matter how much you hate Donald Trump, would want a future president to be held criminally liable for an act as president of the United States?
Well, it's unfortunate because these three liberal justices are truly playing politics over what's important for the future of our country and what the Constitution had hoped for. When you look, even previous cases, you had Supreme Court case Fitzgerald v. Nixon v. Fitzgerald. In that case, it specifically talked about a president couldn't be held liable for civil lawsuits. That bar is very low when you're saying a president can't be held liable for civil. You up the ante when you talk about criminal prosecutions. So these three liberal justices should have looked at Nixon v. Fitzgerald. There is case law that talks about civil liability. So why would we want our president to be criminally responsible? And you nailed it. Joe Biden would have to respond for the soldiers he left in Afghanistan, all 13 of them. The attack in Jordan, we lost 3 soldiers there, our open border crisis. Rachel Moran's family would love to prosecute Joe Biden. It was his act. He left an open border. This is what we don't want, though. We don't want criminals. We want criminals to be prosecuted when they're taking on criminal acts. So if it's bribery, if it's prostitution, things like that, those are deemed criminal. But when you're doing an official act, opening or closing a border, those are acts that we truly don't want threat of criminal prosecution. No commander in chief will be able to actually follow and execute their duties.
Yeah, I don't really care politically. I mean, look, I would love to be able to go after Clinton, but we would be opening such a Pandora's box. And frankly, it's funny that this case needed to happen, because I look at cops have immunity and other government officials. It was kind of nuts. Members of Congress have it. I mean, it was nuts that the president had to wade into this uncertainty for so long, wondering whether or not they could be sued. But I mean, I almost feel like that the Democrats should be thanking President Trump for this. It was funny. He made this comment on the John Fredericks radio show this morning where he basically said, these guys have more to be concerned about than I do. I mean, I think his point was, hey, I've got a strong case. They might be, they could go, other people could sue them after the fact. You brought up some great cases. They'd have a lot to worry about. But let's get into where do we go from here? What does this mean now? I mean, it seems like the court has said, okay, there's a difference between official and personal, right? Where does it head?
So given that this has been a huge victory for not only President Trump, but future commanders in chief, I think we have to hit the pause button, Sean, and we truly need to look at every single case that is pending against President Trump, because he carried out many acts in his official capacity, whether it was questioning the election results or other cases that are are pending right now in the DC Circuit Courts and in the Georgia case. So at this point, I think what's going to happen is this case will get remanded to a lower court. And then all of these cases that are pending in front of President Trump right now are going to pause until we have some more consensus on what the official acts were. So I don't see these cases going before November. So we will have an election and then some pending cases. And if President Trump, who I believe will be the president of the United States this November, all of these cases are going to be dismissed or go away. There's no way you're going to hold a president criminally responsible and liable when he was taking on official acts. So a lot of this lawfare that Democrats have truly pushed against the president just go away. And we can focus on the election and what really matters.
Yeah, there's no question this is a political win, right? It kicks the can down the road at least long enough that we're not going to have to deal with this between now and the election, which kind of means that New York case is the only one pending. Puts a lot of pressure on Judge Mersen. Now he has to carry the weight of all the leftists in the media I actually wonder if this raises the stakes for him to sentence Trump, because now they're like, hey, dude, it's all on your shoulders. You got to do something now.
The weight was always on Judge Mersen's shoulders. He ensured that he did everything to sabotage the rule of law. Regardless of the immunity case, Mersen made sure that we didn't have an expert witness even testify about what a campaign contribution was. He allowed the jury to be dismissed into the wild, wild west, in my opinion, to read mainstream media and all the other news instead of having a decision during a holiday weekend. He continued to stack the deck against President Trump. And the most vile act was the unconstitutional gag order against President Trump, which, by the way, is still pending. There was only a partial repeal of that gag order, which allowed the president to speak about the jury and some of the issues in the case. President Trump still can't speak about this biased liberal DC judge or his daughter that made millions. It's ridiculous, Sean. But yes, the weight of the world will now be on Judge Mersen. And I truly think he was always biased. The sentencing isn't going to change. And Democrats are going to push for additional lawfare.
Yeah. Oh, no. Listen, I wouldn't be surprised now to see a prison sentence, because this is it, man. This is what they got left. And they're like, dude, you got to do something because we need a new talking point. We need to change the game. After the debate, I mean, look, I think a couple things. The gag order, right? You had the debate, the convention. They wanted to make sure that wasn't going to be a talking point. So it's like, we'll gag you on that. But then on this other stuff, man, this is where they need to shift the narrative. After the debate, they need something new. And this could be it, right? This could be it. Put him in, like I've always said, and tell me how crazy this is legally. I think that what they do is they sentence him to jail, but defer the sentence because they know he's going to be appealed. That gives them the talking points on the left, right? So they could say he's going to jail. He's been sentenced to jail pending appeal. So they give the Democrats the talking point without actually sending him to jail.
100%, Sean. This is all about media headlines and talking points, nothing about the rule of law. And even now, this major Supreme Court decision, Democrats are going to come out and push. These conservative judges have gone rogue. You had Nancy Pelosi already talk about a decision before a decision came out. There is no respect for the rule of law when it comes to the Supreme Court decision.
Do you have confidence in the Supreme Court? I mean, they've yet to rule on this immunity thing, all this thing about Alito and the flags and Clarence Thomas and his wife. I mean, do you have confidence in the Supreme Court?
No, I think they've gone rogue. It's most unfortunate.
I'm truly worried about the safety of these justices because I believe that the Democrats have engaged in lawfare. They've weaponized the legal system. And now Mersen is going to take any headline he can and say, Trump is a convicted felon. I am sentencing him to prison. These are headlines they want. And look, you've covered this best. This continues to backfire. Poll after poll, President Trump continues to just clench even tighter that victory for November, in addition to fundraising numbers. This is backfiring on Democrats, and they have no other plan. It's the end of the day for them. It's the end of the game. We now, as Republicans, need to take nothing for granted and focus on November and vote early and vote smart.
100%. It's funny. I started to hear from a lot of the legal experts that Chief Justice Roberts was going to write the case, which he obviously did, or the opinion. But I kept thinking to myself in the back of my mind, all of these attacks leveled by Senator Dick Durbin and other Dem elected officials on Alito and his wife were for a reason. And 6-3 made me realize that maybe I was wrong on this, or that I wasn't, because I kept thinking maybe they know something, that it's a 5-4 case and they want to say, see, if Alito didn't vote, it would have been 4-4. Like, I thought they actually knew something, because the attacks on Alito in the last few weeks have been so big that I kept thinking these guys are trying to play the refs.
Sean, you're right. This is not by design. We are part of what I think is the greatest American experiment, and we are truly pawns in a Democrat scheme, from not only the election interference that is happening at the highest level to Biden's cognitive decline when the media went crazy and said, we had no idea. Everybody knew. And now to attack Supreme Court justices. Nancy Pelosi was just calling the Supreme Court rogue. You're attacking Justice Alito. This is all to continue to manipulate the American people. We have to have respect for the rule of law. We have to have respect for the Supreme Court justices. And sometimes things don't go your way politically. That doesn't mean it's wrong legally.
I just want to get back to the case for a second, right? So they basically are like, hey, if you're an official act, you're covered, which I frankly am shocked, as I said, that we had to deal with this. But if it's a personal act, and I get that, if the president of the United States walks down the street and shoots an enemy of his, or, whatever, does something, and we'd say, okay, that you can't be immune from that. You are still a citizen of the United States and held liable legally for your personal actions that don't have to do with this. It seems to me that Team Trump is going to argue, the president of the United States, doesn't seem to me, this is what they were arguing. The Team Trump, when the president was acting on January 6th, etc., he was acting in his capacity, calling Brad Raffensperger, the Georgia Secretary of State, and saying, as president of the United States, I want to make sure that this election is fair. What Jack Smith and the prosecution are saying is, no. That wasn't as president. That was a candidate, right? How difficult is it going to be for the courts to suss out what's official and what's personal?
Well, I think when it comes to January 6th, we have to look specifically. There was an election, which means that election results are going to be within the purview of a presidential's duties to ensure that these election results were fair. And that's exactly what President Trump was doing in his official capacity. He didn't call in as a private citizen and knock on the Board of Elections door or the Secretary of State to say, I'm going to file against you. He asked if they were fair. So these are all official acts that he was taking before there was an election certification. So we need to make sure that we're applying that standard anytime there's an election to any official, including a president, when you're asking questions. Outside that perimeter would have been if President Trump or any president, for instance, decided to bribe an attorney general or secretary of state to fudge the numbers. None of that happened. On their own accounts, they said President Trump called to ask about the numbers. He was specifically asking about voter counts. That is within his presidential duties and his official act. This is about the election integrity, and that is within a president's purview. So I think that this shouldn't be rocket science. And you said it best. Why did this case even have to come up? For over 200 years, we have known that presidents enjoy immunity. And it's not only civil, but criminal immunity during official acts. If they didn't, we would have had lawsuits with Clinton, Obama. President Trump didn't go out there and try and get Clinton or get Obama. We truly have always respected presidents have certain abilities as they're performing their duties for their acts, and you can't just criminally or civilly prosecute them.
Yeah, that makes total sense. What are the odds? Like, sometimes when I watch TV shows, right, the jury comes back and it's a hung jury, and the prosecution says, all right, well, we're not going to go through this again, right? And they just kind of give up. Does Jack Smith, in a situation like this, when it gets thrown back to the lower court and they say, you guys got to decide all this, does he say, fine, we're going to refile and we'll make the case and we'll go through the whole process again, knowing that Trump would if it was ruled against him, he would then appeal again to the Supreme Court. Does he say, all right, enough's enough. I tried and stop with that? Or does the government just say, screw it, we've got all the resources and time in the world and we're going to keep plowing forward?
Oh no, Jack Smith is a dog with a bone, or whatever the American phrase is. I am telling you, he's going to continue to go at it. And this is where the courts have to slap him down, because President Trump was well within his authority to instruct the Department of Justice to question election fraud using his official White House avenues. So I think that Jack Smith and all of these rogue, well, they're not rogue because they're under Biden's purview, but all of these liberal elitist attorneys are going to try and go after President Trump. And it's going to take massive decisions from courts to push back and say, this was an official act. You have to let it go.
But there's no question, if you're Trump right now, there's this combination of political and legal that met today. Politically speaking, this is no question, this is a big win for him, right? In terms of the timeline and the reality that this isn't going to happen before the election.
That is correct. Politically, this is extremely helpful to President Trump and his continual run for office, because now we know he's not going to be trapped in a courthouse. He can continue to run for office and speak directly to the American people. And the court is going to remand a lot of these cases back. So as you have the judge in Georgia or the judge in DC looking at some of these cases, they have to wait and truly understand what is an official act. That's going to take time, Sean, and that's way past November.
I agree. I mean, we've had the Bob McDonnell, the former governor of Virginia, who that was a whole case that was decided about what was an official act. And I mean, I actually think there's a lot more to this. And I think in the days to come, we'll see more legally in terms of this. I want to pivot, if we can, to your state of Ohio, though. This debate, you have Sherrod Brown, who has been in office almost as long as Joe Biden. And for the longest time, he's portrayed himself as this liberal progressive warrior. This year, he's starting to figure out that the tide has turned massively in Ohio. First, let me just ask you, what's the state of play right there? Is this a guy that can hold on because he's been in office a long time and he's got huge name ID? Or is he really in trouble? Because we met with Bernie Moreno the other day on the show. He seems like he's running a fantastic campaign.
Sherrod Brown definitely has been in office for over 50 years. In my opinion, a couple years too many. He is a career politician who has truly, Sean, never held a real job. He doesn't know what it's like to go to a grocery store and pay for milk or gasoline or just everyday things that Ohioans are struggling with. And this is the year I truly believe Brown will go down, because he has continued to do this, aw shucks, I'm just this local guy. He has the disheveled look, the messy hair, the unkempt suit. That is not who he is. In DC, he's a liberal elite that has continued to vote 99% of the time with Joe Biden. He is even on camera saying, I agree with Joe Biden and his policies. Look at where Biden's policies have gotten Ohioans and the rest of the country. Over 20% in inflation. Bidenomics is not working for Ohioans today. I call it the Biden tax. Every time I go pump gas, diapers, groceries, it's 20% higher. On top of that, Sherrod Brown has doubled down on the illegal immigration crisis. He has voted 99% of the time with Joe Biden. Where is Sherrod Brown when Biden has continued to grant massive amnesty to these illegal immigrants that, by the way, are in Ohio? We had a death in Butler County at the hands of an illegal immigrant. So this is Sherrod Brown's suit to wear now. And for Bernie Moreno to step up and say, I am in it, I'm going to win it. And he's somebody who's a business owner. He employs people. He knows what the cost of gas is because he is driving across the state of Ohio and working for us, something Sherrod Brown has yet to do.
What effect do you think the debate had on that race at all? Like the Dems are basically making the case right now. Hey guys, look, the polls haven't moved. The polls haven't moved. Don't freak out. Everybody stay in your seat, right? So they're trying to calm everyone by claiming in a race like that. And I get it. It doesn't it's been tight. People are on both sides of the fence. But do you think that like in a Brown Moreno race, the debate Thursday night has any effect at all?
I do. I think that as Ohioans saw a massive decline, many of us knew it was happening for Joe Biden. They realized their lieutenant, Sherrod Brown, is going and following everything Biden is doubling down on. And now more than ever, we need a leader, somebody who's going to stand up and hold their boss accountable. And the fact that Sherrod Brown has yet to release a statement to say, Biden, you have to step down, shows us his leadership. He continues to hide in the shadows of Joe Biden, and that is where he belongs. They both belong off stage so we can continue to have world leaders that are like President Trump, who's going to ensure prosperity and peace, and Bernie Moreno. Because again, I always say this to Ohioans, it's not just the top of the ticket, it's who are the individuals that we are sending to Washington, D.C. that are going to represent us. These are the people that are going to undo these massive, crazy regulations that we're seeing, the devastating economy, and protect our southern border. And I believe that's Bernie Moreno. He has unequivocally said everything Joe Biden is doing in our country is wrong. And he will work with President Trump to make sure that we have a safe and secure America and a secure Ohio.
You know, what you just said a second ago, I think was interesting in the sense that when I was at the RNC or working with Trump, if Trump said something that the media found offensive, they would run to every Republican, put a microphone in their face and say, what do you think about what President Trump said? And then they would run around and say, this, look at him, no comment, or he refused to say this. To your point about putting a microphone, and Sherrod Brown's like, why is he allowed, or frankly, any Democrat, to remain silent on Joe Biden's performance the other night? And it's not the performance that matters, frankly. It's whether or not he's fit to hold office. And that's the thing that I find interesting. I think you hit the nail on the head. Why isn't someone putting a microphone in Sherrod Brown's face and saying, are you comfortable with him leading the country for the next 4.5 years, yes or no?
Sean, who's going to put that microphone? Mainstream media? Who?
That's what I mean.
Still for Biden and Sherrod Brown? I mean, come to the state of Ohio. I'd like one reporter in the state of Ohio to do their job. We have Jack Windsor and a couple out there that are now looked at as fringe reporters because they report the truth. I would love one reporter to say, Sherrod Brown, do you think Joe Biden is doing a good job? Please tell me why.
I think it's more than that, Mehek. I don't think it's a good job or a bad job. I don't think whether he can win. I mean, that's where I think I mentioned this earlier. It's not about winning or losing, right? With Trump, they asked, is he fit for office, right? It wasn't, could he win? Every Republican had to answer, is he fit for office? Why aren't Democrats being asked, is he fit for office? They don't want to ask that question in the media because they're afraid. They want to just focus on, can he win? Which is a completely separate question of, yes, I think, sure, of course, he can win. I mean, and will he win? No. Do I think he's going to win? No. Can he win is an easy question, but it's
Right.
the media's way out, right? They don't want to ask the question, is he fit to serve? That's the same question that every Republican gets asked over and over again every time Trump says something. And I mean, going back to the 2015 campaign throughout 2017, 18, 19, whatever, is he fit for office?
They're not going to ask that question. It's
No.
a tougher question. I just gave you an easy one to say, can Joe Biden win? They're refusing to ask Sherrod Brown that. They will not up the ante and ask what matters to every Ohioan. Is he fit? Sherrod
Right.
Brown isn't going to go against Joe Biden. He doesn't have the backbone, just like he doesn't have the backbone to defend Ohio families and uphold his oath to our state, which was to defend the citizens here. He refuses. He has turned his back on us, and he continues to make money off of our dime as he sits in Washington, D.C. and rubber stamps everything Joe Biden has pushed.
Yep. All right, Mehek Cooke, I appreciate you being with us. The legal analysis was spot on and super helpful because I think a lot of us want to understand not just the legal, but the political, and you really can bring the intersection of those things together. So thank you for being with us. Ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow, as I mentioned, Mike Huckabee is going to be here, and as always, he brings his A game. Continue to subscribe on all of our platforms. Hit that notification button on YouTube in particular, because you never know when we're going to go live. It happens all the time. Hit that button, subscribe on YouTube, Rumble. Do me a favor and get the audio version as well if you're watching it on YouTube or Rumble, and vice versa on Apple, Spotify, iTunes. Always, and especially if you're watching on the first channel, 347 on DirecTV, I appreciate that. But you can always get your backup version. You never know. You're going to be on the beach. Maybe you're in a car ride. You don't know. Maybe you're on the cover of Vogue hanging on a photo shoot with Joe Biden. I don't know. But you want to have access to the show. We will see you back here tomorrow on the Sean Spicer Show. Thank you. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.